Let's acknowledge the good friends of the Loft Party Podcast. The Majestic Restaurant and Pendergast Club, 931 Broadway in Kansas City, Missouri. The J. Rieger Kansas City Distillery. Oh, so good. Now onto our regularly scheduled program.
Just not getting it.
Welcome everybody out there in podcast land. The Good Times with Good People Company proudly presents the Loft Party Podcast, where it is always about good times, good people, and good talk. Please subscribe to the Loft Party Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and SoundCloud. Be sure to tell a friend, and you have received your invitation, and welcome to the party. I'm your host and moderator, Reno, and let me introduce you to today's panel. So, we've got our returning champions. Of course, there is Chris O'Connor. He is the co-owner of Liquid 9 Broadcast Media. We have got our man of wealth and stature, wealth. Lane Bolin. Lane Bolin, our wealth manager on the panel today. He's back from a little hiatus. We've got Big Dave Elliott. He is the owner of C&P Construction. We have got Brian Massey. He is a market analyst for True Media. He is our own personal brain mass. And of course, the anonymous female, because she doesn't want you to know her name. And we have got a show that is chock full of every political nut that you can think of. And I like to call this episode Respect the Machine. So, before we get started with respecting the machine, we do want to pay our respects to Janet Reno. She was the first female U.S. Attorney General, and she passed away at 78. So, do we have any comments or remembrances of some great or maybe not so great things you think that Janet Reno did when she was serving?
It's hard to get attention as Attorney General unless you really screw up. She did a pretty good job. The thing I'll always remember most is the impression that Dana Carvey always did on her own Saturday Night Live. Yeah. A little bit not the way you want to be remembered. But then she actually went on and had a nice career in Florida, I believe, in politics after she left office and did pretty well. So,
Well, they said, her most notable, well, I don't know if it was her most notable, the one that probably sticks with people the most was the sending the kids back to.
What?
Yeah.
I think as we've seen recently, that everybody's going to try very hard to politicize the office of Attorney General. We've certainly seen that a lot recently. But, so I kind of feel for her a little bit in that aspect, is that I think they get caught up in it sometimes, where they have to try to please their peers that have put them there.
sure.
I would like to see, like it is on the state level, I would like to see the Attorney General be elected.
It'd be interesting. I don't know. And again, I think people don't know enough about lawyers and what they do.
Well,
and
it doesn't help the ignorant voter, but the more intelligent voter would quite likely.
You would hope they would counterbalance the vote and at least make it fair. There's just so many straight party ticket voters, you get nervous. Unless you just had to run as an independent, which would be interesting. If you could not declare a party as Attorney General.
Well, you know what? I think that.
So I think that's what the judiciary should be.
I think that sounds interesting. Anything to do with judiciary, to me, you should all be party neutral. To me, because it doesn't. Of course, you have possibly liberal or conservative leanings, but I think it's a conflict of interest, really, to me, to have actual party affiliation.
I'd be interested to hear, Lane has a law degree. And, for me, I'm looking at somebody like that. There's certainly term limit in a way for Attorney General because they rarely survive the next administration. But particularly with the Supreme Court justices in there for life anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's a time that needs to change.
I don't
that,
think
anybody should be appointed for life.
Correct.
No.
I completely
I
disagree.
think that there should be term limits on everybody.
Absolutely not. I think the machinations of government are so complex and so unwieldy that it is impossible for these newbie people who are all these idealists to know how it works, what the system is. It takes you 3 terms in office just to figure out how the rules work. I mean, then you get a crafty dude like a Bob Dole or a Tip O'Neill or, you know, John Boehner's been there forever, and they can run just the rule circles around you forever because there's so many of them. You know, and so it's term limits. Listen, here's the other bad thing.
Nobody said it had to be 1 or 2 terms.
Here's the
but
other
I
bad
think
thing about terms.
I don't think you should be able to be in office, in any office,
So if you
for
decide,
more than 50 years.
if your time is up, and just like right now,
Yeah.
we have nobody good running for president, but we can't take the 2 people who may be decent for president and vote for them. That's horrible for this country. That's really bad to me.
What about the?
Well,
I don't.
And if
Oh, sorry.
America, it's like bars that say no smoking. You know what all you had to do? You didn't need to pass a law. You could have put up a sign that said no smoking. That's really all you had to do. So if America doesn't want the guy to win again, don't vote for him again. You know, the only reason it was a 2-term limit
I don't think
anyway,
that's a good analogy.
the only reason, it's a great analogy, because literally, by the power of your vote,
so.
by the power of your vote, you get to choose. If you really don't want somebody to run more than twice, don't vote for him. That's great. But this started as, and it's a fallacy how it started. It was a myth only because George Washington only ran twice. If he had ran 3 times, term limits would be 3 times as president. If he ran 4 times,
I
it would
thought
be 4
he
times.
did. I thought he had
only
more than
ran
2
twice.
term limit.
Nope, only ran 2 times for president.
There is
There's
somebody
There's
that
only been
has.
one president who served more than 2 terms.
Yeah.
That's absolutely
FDR.
true. FDR.
Yeah.
That's why it was such a big deal. And the other big thing was that Theodore Roosevelt tried to run for what was technically a 3rd term, although he came into office because McKinley was assassinated. So that's why if you read the Constitution, the actual rule is not 2 terms, it's 10 years.
Oh.
Because you could be the vice president of a president who got assassinated and then run for 2 more full terms.
Right.
So 10 years is your term limit as president.
So you can only assassinate the president after 2 years?
If you want the dude to run again.
So.
It's an interesting twist of history.
I don't think I'm not opposed to saying, you know, you can run again, but I think there should be some type of break, yeah, in what you're doing.
I think the state of Kansas and Missouri would both have been absolutely supportive of that being the case. I think we had exceptional congressmen and senators who served very long times, were instrumental at steering money to 2 states in the Midwest who were overlooked almost all the time, and did a lot of good things.
Bob Dole and Kip Bond.
Drive the Ike Skelton Bridge, not so bad. You know, thank God we got some federal money for that, and he knew how to get it.
I had
I'll
his
take it.
wife as a teacher in high school,
Who?
Skelton.
Oh.
It's about 1 billion farmers on in western Kansas that are pretty grateful about those stuff around. I mean, you know.
I'm sure they are.
Alright, so next on my list is they shooting made you look. I personally thought this was hilarious. Somebody at a Trump rally,
In Las Vegas,
in Vegas,
of course.
which sounds about right. Lane, I'm gonna need to see your travel from the last few days.
You weren't in Vegas, were you, Lane?
No.
Okay, just checking.
Just check.
Yeah.
Let's check.
I mean,
Somebody yelled
What's
out.
up, man?
Somebody
You
yelled
come
out
in and
gun.
you're just all over it.
Oh, that was not me. I was in St. Louis when that happened.
Somebody yelled
Where
out.
there really
gun.
was a gun.
Right, they may have put a gun.
What is
Look,
the over-under on the election right now?
Oh, Hillary, Vegas, the line is 3-1.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's
For
pretty much
Hillary?
lower than I
for
thought.
Hillary, yeah.
A lot lower than I thought.
Good Morning America has been saying it was 3.
Yeah.
Is that 3?
Yeah.
Not that that matters in Vegas, but I think they're the only one that has said that. Everybody else is like 7, 8.
Yeah, no.
You know, I would never bet against Vegas on the odds. They make their living for a reason.
Yeah.
Unless it's your last night there.
Yeah, really.
Well, like Director Comey,
What's that?
Director Comey didn't say anything. He might have been looking at his last night.
Yeah,
Heart attacks happen.
that guy.
I gotta say, can you imagine the rumors had a gun been fired?
Oh yeah.
Imagine the rumors of, because there are, right?
Well, and the funny thing is, at the end of all this, they rush him off stage. They do the whole Schmitty, and there is no gun. There's no gun to be found.
Yeah, somebody hollered.
Somebody.
It was a plant.
Yeah, somebody yelled gun, and so they Secret Service.
Let's see how
Which is
let's see how easy it would be.
But that's a serious offense.
No, it's
because
a very
that's like
serious
yelling
offense.
fire. You cannot go in a building and yell fire.
Yeah, absolutely.
This
Absolutely.
dude's got some serious issues on his hands right
If they can prove that he didn't
now.
really
He
think
probably
there
got
was a
somebody
gun.
paying for all of it.
Well, I mean,
But-
it's not a joke. I mean, think of how many people presidents have been shot. Like,
Yeah,
there's
Or-
probably more presidents shot at than not,
He could have started.
shot at,
for sure.
yes,
Well, not only that,
definitely.
the worst thing that happens in that
Reagan.
situation.
There have been
Yeah.
several assassination attempts.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah,
It's,
absolutely.
it's not the assassination attempt in that situation. It's the potential to stampede.
That's true too.
That's the problem with
Panic.
that.
Yeah,
The
which is
potential
why you
stampede,
can't yell
where,
fire.
where an older person or a younger person gets knocked down, 20 people run over
Yeah, they're
them, and they
dead.
end up dead.
That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
Walmart at Christmas.
Oh,
That's the problem with that law and that rule there, is that's why it's in place.
yeah. I mean, shoot, there was a.
You cannot do it in a crowded area. 'cause
People
will
panic
stampede.
anyway,
Yes,
though,
they're gonna
you
panic.
don't, I mean, you don't have to yell fire or gun, they just,
There was a nightclub in Chicago, and there was I think somebody did pull a gun, and so everybody tried to rush out, and they had one staircase up or out of the building, and then the doors opened in instead
Oh.
of pushing out. And yeah, I think it was 19 people got trampled to death. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they changed all types of rules after
I
that.
think-
where was the?
Actually, they changed the rules
Well,
nationwide.
where was the-
on that
Yes, it
nightclub
did.
after
It
that.
became a code. That's a code now. You cannot ever have a public place of meeting with the door swinging in. It always has to be able to swing out.
Well, you
And
need
you have to have
to,
more, you have to have more than one exit.
you need to
So you
tell,
can be grandfathered in, right? If you.
I don't
No,
believe so. I
no.
don't believe so.
because DST, half of their doors, you have to pull in, and I'm like, every time I go through it, I'm like, this is fire hazard, cause you can't push it out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I thought it was any building built after a certain date had to.
We would have had, cause we remodeled all of our buildings within the last 3 years. So, you walk in, yes, those doors swing out.
Yeah.
But internally, when you're going from area to area where there's doors, they all pull in.
Interesting.
Now, the interesting thing, I did see the video of this. And the one interesting thing I saw is that, sure, there were some people turning around and heading the other way. There was a whole bunch of people went right at that guy. And I think this is the different society that we live in nowadays, because we're so terrorist sensitive that people are learning not to have what happened in Orlando. Attack them. If you're going to get taken out, don't stand there and let him shoot you. Take him out if you can. If he kills you in the way, he's going to kill you anyway.
Yeah.
I just thought that was now I know there was security there, but it was more than just security going to whoever yelled at. There was a whole bunch of people.
No, it was a lot
And
of.
I found that a very interesting aspect.
Yeah, it just
People are
makes
changing
me,
their views.
Yeah, it always makes me think of what was that flight? Which flight was the one?
Where they got up and.
They
Yeah,
took the
Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, let's roll.
Yeah, United 93, yeah.
Yeah, let's roll.
They took the terrorists down. Yeah, I thought, I always think of that every time there's a situation where the crowd goes after the person, because, there's a lot that you have to process in that moment. And to be that kind of selfless, like, hey, if I'm going out, I'm going out,
Wayne,
If you think
you and I in that situation,
I
what's
think
gonna happen?
United 93 was a
No
little bit
brainer,
different
right?
though,
We're
because
running at it,
they
he's
had,
running away
they,
from it.
they
Everyone
didn't have a
dies.
lot of time,
Everyone dies.
but they.
And I ain't going down, I ain't gonna get shot in the back, I'm gonna
attack
get shot
on
in
the
the head.
terrorists.
I'll
I
be the
think when
hero.
you're in a situation where there's a gun,
That's how I am. I will never change from that.
that's a little bit different. Like, it is truly in the moment.
I don't know, I do think.
Good,
there's a
probably good I
certain
wasn't a
degree that-
soldier, I'd be dead already.
I'm not disagreeing either, but I do think that there's a certain amount of mentality that's changed about
Oh, I
Dude, if
agree.
you're on a fucking plane and then somebody tries to light their shoe on fire, I'm not planning what's going on. You just gotta fucking jump
Yeah.
on them and hope to God that it doesn't work.
Yeah,
Because you're dead either way.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly, that's my point.
Yeah, I think that is the ultimate thing. Like you're dead either way. So hey, how do you want to go out?
I think I told you this last time. I was on a plane that was gonna crash land. They're like, okay, we literally lost a shit ton of engines. We were crashing in that land. I ducked down. I'm like, I'm not ducking down. So what? But you know, I'm gonna see it if I go.
I'm gonna watch it.
Bending down's not gonna save my life, Andy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
It's just like
absolutely
this,
agree.
it was just like the civil defense drills when I was a kid and we were in the Cold War. And they tell us to go out in the hallway if we're having a nuclear attack and bend over and kiss our asses goodbye.
Yeah.
You know, we
Oh, yeah. I wanna watch the Flash, I wanna watch the Flash.
We were somewhere over the weekend and my hairstylist, I was like, who asked me that? If I ever did bomb drills, like you do fire drills?
We did bomb drills, yes we did.
I didn't,
We did.
but that was interesting to me.
Yeah, we did for sure.
We absolutely did.
I remember him in
I
grammar
remember-
school. I don't remember him in
I
high
don't
school.
remember, maybe I just was, thought it was a fire drill, I don't know, but I don't remember ever.
We had civil defense shelters in Paola. And they had potable water in them. They had sustainable foods, dried foods,
Oh, wow.
that if you could get down there and wanted to feel like you wanted to survive a post-apocalyptic world, not me, but that they literally had these things in place supposedly to make the public feel safe. That's all it boiled down to.
Yeah.
Interesting, out of Lake Lotawana, individual you may know, he is one of the most wealthy individuals in town that nobody knows about, okay? And employs thousands of people and does a lot of good. Owns a whole bunch of houses out there. And when he bought all these properties, there's a bomb shelter that has 5 rooms, completely concrete, completely underground. In fact, there's 2 of them on this piece of property right out there at Lake Lotawana, right along the edge of the lake. And these things, it's pretty interesting. These are bomb shelters. And they were built a long time ago.
I can see it.
You just read
Anyway,
all
we
that.
got off topic.
No, it's good.
Interesting though.
Actually, you actually touched on it briefly. Our next thing, talking about the FBI director and a segment I want to call the director that cried wolf. But did anybody hear him when he cried wolf? Because I know I didn't hear it until this morning.
I think we were
actually. When that he, for those of you out there in podcast land, FBI director said that they were going to reopen an investigation on Hillary because there was a massive amount of emails on Anthony Weiner's computer, and of course, Anthony Weiner has the dick that's going to destroy democracy as we know it, and. And he was already under investigation for sending stuff to underagers, and so his estranged wife works for Hillary, used his computer from time to time. I hope she Purelled afterwards. Either way it goes, what they found was there was nothing to find. Lots of duplicates of stuff they already saw, and lots of just kind of unessential email traffic. But I know there's more opinions at this table.
There's more opinions.
than that. As Big Dave is showing Hillary memes.
I have a humor thing here where it's got a big face of Anthony Weiner, and he says, "Great news, Hillary, I kept your 3,000 deleted emails safe." I couldn't help but laugh
I
at
will
that.
say this,
That was funny.
imagine the flip side. So you come across a laptop that has all kinds of references to correspondence between Anthony Weiner's wife, I forget her name, and Hillary Clinton, and she was very high up in the campaign. and all of a sudden, you don't know, and he found out the day before he announced it.
Yeah.
And so, she had been admonished in probably the worst terms any Secretary of State had ever been admonished by the DOJ, who said, you did everything criminal, but we probably can't figure out a way to prosecute you good enough. So, you did everything frickin' wrong.
Right.
But we just probably can't press the case. Imagine he knew that there were another, and I forget the exact number, 30,000, whatever it was,
Right.
emails that were sitting out there on his laptop,
Oh, yeah.
found on this dude's laptop, and he didn't make that public before the election. Can you imagine if it came out 2 weeks after the election and she had won on the landslide? Imagine how crucified he would have been then.
Oh.
That dude couldn't have won no matter what.
Yeah, no, he was definitely.
Furthermore, there's a huge fight still between the DOJ, the Attorney General's office, and the FBI about whether or not they actually had enough ammunition to prosecute her. And a lot of people, most people in the FBI thought they could have nailed her to the wall based on the information. And it turns out, once again, the two political parties, two political groups involved, decided, no, we don't have quite enough. Although the DOJ is supposed to be impartial, they're about as impartial as my mom on Fox News at 8 o'clock. So there's no way. There was a very legitimate reason to reopen that case, and good for her for nothing being in there, but I sincerely doubt that that's accurate. And they couldn't have gone through the emails that quickly. That's ridiculous. Yeah. So
I think the biggest problem that all this brings down to us is the fact that never before has the general public been drugged through so much shit, and I will say shit, and crap, and lying, and deceit, and
Nixon versus McGovern.
yeah, it's just insane. It's just insane.
See, which is the reason, not to cut you off, that I love Lane and Chris both sitting at the podcast table, because historically, you guys remember shit on a level that none of the rest of us are going to remember.
Right.
But that's amazing.
But it is, if anything, this election should be a wake-up call to all people and parties and political inclination that things have to change. This cannot continue on to where we end up with these two candidates that we have to vote for.
I think it means that anyone really can be president.
Well,
In some ways, you're right.
I don't want anybody to
Like,
I know. I'm not saying that's right.
But this
I'm not
is
saying
not.
that's right.
Are you
I-
mad?
no.
well, now Lane is just waiting his turn.
Go ahead, Lane, give me your opinion.
No. There's two very significant historical events which have led to Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. The first being Lyndon Baines Johnson signing the Civil Rights Act and losing the Cracker South to from the Democrat Party. Yeah, he claims for 80 years. We'll see. Then in 1980s, an advisor to Reagan by the name of Karl Rove realized that the only way the Republican Party was ever going to compete with the Democratic machine that had subsequently picked up the minority vote was to change the discussion to guns, abortion, social issues.
With the love of Ralph Reagan.
Right. To win, I hate to use this word, the cracker vote, right? So now the problem is the Republicans have historically been the party of big money, right? And big government, right? Well, that all changed when Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, and the Republicans lost the minority vote. So they were just the party of big money, got their asses handed them for the next 15 years, right? So they had to change American political discourse from a discussion of economics, which it has always been, to one of social issues, right? So I'm talking in circles right now, but the point I'm trying to get at is we have two parties where their historical roots betray their
roots,
their current supporters, right? And so it's gonna be interesting to see. But Donald Trump, I'll tell you right now, if Donald Trump does not win this election, the Republican Party as we know it is destroyed. And the reason why is that same cracker vote, right? That's the vote that's backing Trump. they're gonna get so pissed off at the Republicans, like the establishment Republicans, like Paul Ryan and Roy Blunt, blah, 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 right? Just mark my words, they will go back to the Democratic Party over the next 10 to 15 years, which will be a major injection of conservatism, fiscal conservatism into the Democrat Party, which will make it very hard. What I'm getting at is a Clintonite will thrive in an environment like that, because all they do is they sit in the center, wait to see which way the wind's blowing, and that's the way they're going. But what I'm trying to get at is I think this is the apex, the apogee, if you will, of this nastiness and infighting. Because honestly, the best thing that could happen to the American public would be that cracker vote to go back to the Democrats to kind of balance out the crazy Bernies of the world. Anyhow, that's just.
I think you're seeing both parties fracture tremendously. And I still think I would never underestimate the recession of the late 70s in terms of picking up the Republican vote again.
Right.
That was major. I mean, the 30-minute gas line.
Right.
And they rationed you on that even.
Right.
Yeah, with hostages sitting there in Iran and we fuck up of a rescue operation. Democrats and that nobody had faith in the Democrats at that point.
No.
It was gone.
But it blows my mind that there are these so-called Republicans, right, that don't even remember what the Republican Party was like before 1964.
I have no idea.
Right? So what I'm trying to say is, for example, my wife's family, they're all these rabid Republicans now. But if you go back 2 generations, they were rabid Democrats. What?
Well, I would make the same argument that the African Americans have that's the exact same thing. I mean, my God, for 100 years they were Republican no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter
the
what.
Party of Lincoln. Yeah.
Absolutely, that was the thing.
Yeah.
But the problem is, both parties are being held hostage by social ideologues, which prevent us from having a meaningful, civil, rational, compromising discussion on the issues that matter, and that's the issues of prosperity.
I would agree, but I find it like stunning how little people know. For example, when Robert Byrd, who was the former leader of the KKK,
oh my God,
he was picking up like 80% of the black vote.
Yeah. How?
Research just
a little. Research just a little.
I'd like to take one more minute again to re-announce on the eve of the election my candidacy of the Socialist Conservative Party here. Don't forget, Big Dave needs your vote. Thank you very much. Thank you. Believe me.
We may wind up changing the name of the Loft Party Podcast to the Requiem for American Idiocracy. It's
pretty impressive.
Every single week something happens and it brings me back to that freaking movie.
Right.
Like I remember the first time I sat there and I watched it and I was thinking to myself, what the fuck is this? And like this isn't even possible. Like that the public could get that kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Like they were watering their grass with Gatorade and water was just what was in the toilet bowl and the president was like an ex-wrestler or something.
Oh, that's coming.
Oh yeah.
That's coming. Yes.
Yes. My point exactly. My point exactly.
We had an
Big
actor.
Dave.
My point exactly. We've already had an actor.
It won't be a wrestler. It'll be a porn star.
Man.
We did we didn't.
Look, I guess the thing that strikes me is, or scares me really, is the better word, is just the lack of any real knowledge in the electorate.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, you've got at least two sets of facts, and the truth is, rarely glanced at, from either direction.
Truth is irrelevant.
I would say facts is very difficult. You're talking about an ideology, and you don't know which way it's going to go. It's what is your best guess as to what's going to happen, and Some people tend to believe socially we need to get together. Some people believe that there's individual responsibility, that needs to be the thing. That's more the thing. We're not arguing necessarily facts all the time. We're arguing what we guess is going to happen in the future and who's the best person to handle it.
I'm coming at Brian.
Well, you know what? Not even. I hear what you're saying, but we are arguing facts though. Like for example, and I know this is always a controversial one,
That's
but
us.
but climate change, right? So whether
Bullshit.
you believe that climate change is a real thing, or whether you believe, it's some made up conspiracy to have us talking about something other than whatever you think we should be talking about.
There's a second side to that. Don't phrase the argument like that, because now you've made it completely a one-sided case. What I would say is some people believe there is climate change going on right now that is man-made. Other people believe that it's a cycle that the Earth has gone through for millions and millions and millions of years, when in fact in the late 1960s, when Silent Spring came out, the Rachel Carson book, they said we were getting ready to go into an ice age. So there's different things. The world circles around. Meteorology and the history of meteorology is so young, and we have no data. We have best guesses from whatever happened before in very large swings. But we're looking at it on a month-to-month, day-to-day. I love it in January. People are like, oh my God, it hit 50, global warming.
But here's one thing I find really interesting. I've always been a fan of National Geographic.
Uh-huh.
And we had stacks and stacks of National Geographic in our house. So it was just something we all read, the whole family read National Geographic. And they had articles about the coming ice age, and I was going to get colder and all this. And now National Geographic's totally on the other end of the scale. It's to make your point.
Yeah, it's a little baby science. We have no data.
Go ahead.
We
Well,
have very little data.
so what was the point you were going to make?
Sorry.
Well,
I mean,
I guess what I'm saying is, so like, you're right. It's a young science.
Keep going on that.
But, I guess my thinking is, if you have 99% of the scientists in this field saying one thing,
Mm-hmm.
is it not then a fact?
No.
That, maybe whether it's man-made or it's a natural cycle, is it not still happening?
I will argue
guess
that
is the question.
99% of the scientists in the mid-1500s thought the sun revolved around the Earth instead of the other way around.
True.
I mean, I can point out 99% of scientists being wrong all the time. The world evolves, we learn new things, it changes, that's what happens. They used to believe that leeches were the best way to cure blood diseases.
This is
I
true.
mean, let's be honest, we only
Well,
deal
they
with what
believed
we
that
know.
bleeding was the way to.
Sure, you slice a vein, that's how Washington ended up.
But I'll tell you, there's a part of my family that is very, very religious. And you can't, everything is God's will and it's in the
Sure.
Bible and you should read this and blah, 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 blah. So it's very hard to have real conversations with people because, for everything, they are so stuck in what they believe that it's their opinion or their belief is right that you can't,
That's ideology and it happens on both sides.
yeah, it does. And I'm not saying they being people that don't believe what I believe, but it's very rare. I can't have conversations with anybody. I was talking to somebody about the freaking World Series and they were like, I hate the Cubs or I hate Chicago. And I was like, what did Chicago do to you? I don't hate them, but it was just, it really sounded like they had a real
Hate is too
reason.
strong of a word.
Yeah, but that's how it came out,
But-
and that's how every conversation I have anymore, at least right now, is how it's been. Like you really can't just say I'm rooting for the Indians. I hate Chicago, and it was just like, dang.
I'm not religious.
Wait, I have something here. There is only one true hate in sports. One true.
Okay.
Yankees.
Palestine versus Israel in the World Cup.
No, Red Sox and Yankees.
I
Listen,
don't hate anything.
England, Ireland, rugby.
People
We're
use
talking
it
about
as
American
a
sports here.
thing.
Red Sox and Yankees.
That's what you do. You go to extremes to make your point. I don't think anybody's actually sitting there saying I hate this in real life and it consumes me. I think they think, listen, I'm gonna make the strongest point I can and use the strongest language I can and blah blah blah. That's what happens all the time, you know. But I do believe, and again, I'll say I'm not religious, but the same argument falls back.
I strongly prefer the Indians over those Chicago cunts.
You're strongly advised to leave
Did
the
you say what I
table.
think you said?
I do have a question for the mass
You
brain
didn't
over
say
here.
coach, did you?
Brain Max, question for you.
How much, we kind of go off track a little bit about, but we were talking about history
Oh, you're so funny.
and what you were taught in school about history compared to what Lane was taught, or what you and I were taught, or Mario and the anonymous female were taught. I mean, we were taught, we went, especially in the short period of time I was in college, we were taught about the railroads and went through all that history and all the different acts that came on and brought the railroads, and then we went right on through to World War II, and we went through the Jim Crow years, we went through the civil rights, we went through all kinds of history. All right, and this is the way history was taught, and even from Revolutionary, of course, we were taught that. In junior high, were you taught any of that? On an intense basis?
I'll say that in the school system, first of all, I'll tell you that the last time I had a history course, I was 13.
13.
Yeah.
Really?
You see that, I find, and how many years, did you go 4 years of college, or did you go more?
4.
So you went 4 years of college, and you went to where?
KU.
Oh, jeez.
I would ask,
But-
out of what you were taught, what did you believe?
It was so long
Because that's
ago.
what I
But it's scary to me
Crap.
that he stopped having any history at 13 years of age.
Right.
I think the history they taught was crap.
Well,
Well, they
The
don't
history they
teach,
taught was wrong.
by the time we were in school, they quit teaching civil rights on a large scale. You had like, what, maybe a week of it, or maybe a couple days of it, right around Martin Luther King Day. And Rihanna, my daughter, they don't teach it almost nothing.
I had
You
a
have to
history
look it up
class.
yourself.
My sophomore, junior, and senior year in high school, we were taught different history classes. History was a big deal to our education.
We
and
had
our
American
curriculum in the
history
1970s.
one year, we had world history another year.
American history.
Yeah, so if I remember back, freshman year of high school, there was world history. And
No
then
American history.
Well, that came in
I think,
sophomore, junior year.
that may have happened, but so I had, the reason why, I would say about half my class actually had tested out of all those right before we went into high school, which is why for a lot of us, that was the last time we'd had it. 'Cause I remember it was the same summer I had driver's ed.
Actually, history in college.
At 13? Oh, you were in
We had a very good professor, Dr. Ruth Townsend, and it was even though it was a really hard class, one of the few classes I actually got a B in, and most everything else I got an F in, but it was so fascinating in the way it was sculpted and the things we had to study and things to do, it was extremely interesting to me, and I was ADD, so anything was interesting to me, I excelled at. Anything was boring to me, or I just couldn't comprehend, screw it, I was done. That's why I flunked.
I can
But-
tell you that there is some problems around it. Because my family now teaches in that same high school, and I think ever since I've been there,
already.
not that this is to say anything negative against high school football coaches, but they always seem to have coaches that are teaching teaching the history classes that maybe don't really know a lot about.
Always the football.
And they
coaches.
aren't really that
Yeah, I don't
passionate
know
about
why
it.
it's
I
always
didn't
football
have-
coach, but.
See,
And it's-
I didn't have any coaches. The coaches on ours were freaking math.
Really?
Yeah, we had a coach
Yeah.
that taught math, and we also had our other coaches taught PE,
You lose a lot of
because
games.
we all had PE back in those days too.
Yeah.
No, we were actually a winning team
I
then.
sincerely doubt that.
Against
Wow.
Wow.
That
But you know,
hurts.
there's added issues to that, which is that, I mean, coaches are out of class a lot of times because they're out, like they have a game out of town. At least in rural Kansas, I mean,
Yeah.
whenever we had an out of town game, we're traveling 2.5 hours somewhere.
And,
I
and
mean,
we,
so they're gone for half the day, so they get a substitute. There's no real solid cadence of having the same teacher there, and they're not. I mean, It's just a bad situation.
I mean, I would love to get off this subject and get back to where we got off. And the point of the climate change conversation was not to actually discuss climate change in any way. It was actually to talk about the way people phrase arguments.
Yeah, no,
And
absolutely.
that's a far more interesting thing, and I think an infinitely larger problem on why it's harder to agree. And the way and we talked about this last time. We can both be right, you know, and saying it in the way that makes the best case for us. That's what lawyers do.
That's a beautiful thing when we do talk about it.
Well, which is what, and I've said it
This
before
is
on
the
this
bottom line.
podcast.
That's what's cool about this panel.
Yeah, I love this forum because we actually talk about things. We
Don't always agree, but we
don't always agree, but we actually talk about it and not.
I've always.
Nobody, throws a chair and curses somebody out.
Yeah.
We're saving that for an upcoming episode, ladies and gentlemen. Oh,
We'll see how everybody
bring
feels
DW
next
over.
Monday.
yeah. So now that I've got both of my history heads in the room, I want to move to the next two segments because we're going to blow through one.
You better hurry.
We're going to blow through one because I think all we really need is just an explanation. The other, we can dive in a little deeper. And the first is, hey, Mom, can I go to electoral college?
Oh my gosh.
So, whichever one of you wants to jump in, Lane or Chris, the electoral college, in brief, you don't have to go state by state, but kind of how does it work and why do we still use it?
It actually is still state by state too, in the degree that it's applied to some degree, but it is there to protect smaller states from being underrepresented, and it is there for specific states at different times that have a larger influence. So if you think about the time that America's been doing these elections, there have been many different years and many different states are important. Missouri used to be critically important, and now our economy has shifted, and now it's a different representation.
So typically when we have events back there, we kind of shut that bathroom off. Do you guys mind if they?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as they know we're recording.
Exactly.
There you go. Thank you.
So that's it. I mean, it's just to literally just represent the, again, that's why it's winner take all. That's why it's not just popular vote and you split it out and those kinds of things. But it is literally to just make sure that smaller states get a representation and can be important in an election. That's right. I mean, would you agree with this?
When did the history of when did the electoral college start?
When did it start? 1787.
So it was from the beginning.
Yeah, that was one of the big compromises.
Now it
that
was
smaller
even
states made.
more important prior to, I forget which amendment it was, but it was before 1820. But the electoral college was actually the Senate. The president was elected by the Senate.
Yep.
And the reason why was
I thought it was still the Senate.
the founding fathers, get back to it, they wanted to give the people a voice, but they wanted to limit the irrationality of the mob. By mob, I don't mean organized crime, I mean
The people.
right.
We get a collective mind.
Right.
Well, but
It
you
can
also-
be influenced by others who speak.
Right.
True, but you also had unrepresented states which were lower in would have been disproportionately
Delaware.
excluded. Exactly. And then the other big thing was, in several of the first elections, you actually voted separately for president, vice president, and run as a ticket. And so that was another big part
Yeah,
of it
number one got
was-
president, number two got vice.
So, yeah.
Was there only 13 states in 1787 still?
Yeah.
There had not been another state
No,
until
not-
the 1800s.
not at that point.
1789.
1789, and it wasn't until we took over
Right.
the Spanish territories in Florida.
Right, and then,
Louisiana territory in 1804.
Yeah, Kentucky, 1792.
Oh my God.
Which is why I like my history guys up there.
I'm like, ding.
The best part about it is, and I love it when we were founding fathers, one, they all hated each other, and B, the Louisiana Purchase may have been one of the most illegal acts of all time by one of the strictest constitutional presidents ever. For Jefferson to go up on his own and buy the Louisiana Purchase was completely illegal.
And we impeached Bill for getting a little something on the side.
Priorities.
That's that culture war for you.
But they make coon asses. And I like coon asses.
So what's the other topic?
Well,
For the other topic,
Oh, are we done? I'm sorry.
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Dave distracted me. Keep it.
the other topic is respecting the machine. And I'm
yeah.
sure.
I just realized. I'm sorry. No,
No,
dovetail.
no, go ahead.
Okay, so the electoral college existed back when there were some serious voter qualifications, i.e., you had to be a white landowning male aged 21.
Yes.
And the reason why is because taxation was based off of property ownership.
Right.
And so the founding fathers intended that the only way that you were going to be allowed to have a say in the government is if you had a stake in the country, right? Well, see, the thing is, we all freaking pay taxes now, so there's no reason to have an electoral college. With media and the hyper-connectedness, there really isn't that much difference between Delaware and Nebraska in terms of access to information. So I'm going to get skewered for this by Chris, but I say we do away with those assholes and go straight to a national popular vote.
I do not like a popular vote, but what I would
You not like?
what I would also say is a flip side to it too,
Yeah.
which is this exact same argument they had when they were forming the Constitution, which is how is your representation in the government based?
Right.
And so you had the South saying, no, it's based on,
Right.
white landowners and these kinds of things. But then there were so many more people in the North, they said, but we also want to count all the African Americans that live in the South disproportionately as people in the North. It's like, what the hell? They don't know land and they know nothing. So what come they came up with the very famous 3-5 compromise. And so that's how it, like a portion of it came about too, is
Right.
okay, we'll have to strike a balance of what counts and what doesn't count.
Right.
It's complete freaking nonsense. I mean, it's just a scam.
We
Just
probably should just
absolute
rewrote the Constitution with the Civil Rights Act.
They were so wrong. Like
Just
when
saying.
people go
Probably
founding
should have,
fathers were
actually.
right, they were wrong on so many things.
What's interesting to me is when you go back and you look at some of the amendments that we've had to do to the Constitution. Some of the amendments were so fundamentally against the original document that I'm like, at a certain point,
The income tax amendment.
and you know what?
The 16th Amendment.
And you know what? We'll actually talk about this on a later podcast.
All right.
At a certain point,
Let's talk about the machine now.
let me get this thought out there, just so our listeners out there can chew on this idea. At a certain point, with the amount of amendments that we've had to the Constitution, is it time for a page 1 rewrite?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we won't get into it today, but Chris has already said no.
Burn them.
Yeah. So now
That would be a heavy subject.
Yeah.
That'd be a very heavy subject.
So now, the machine.
Oh,
Welcome to the machine.
So, where I am from originally, Chicago, Cook County in particular,
Well known as the machine.
the machine. And that machine, as long as I have been alive and well into the 50s that I'm pretty sure of, there has been a political machine in Illinois, and particularly Chicago, that is overwhelming to say the least. I was actually really surprised when Chicago's current mayor even had the opportunity to run for mayor.
Wow.
Because
Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah, well, because Rahm Emanuel. Okay, think about it like this out there in podcast land. You work in the White House, chief of staff to the president, and it was a better idea to resign from the White House to go run a city.
Yeah.
That's how good it is to run the machine in Chicago.
Well,
Like,
or
we're gonna leave the whole country, and we're just gonna go right here because it's better for me. Which is crazy to me.
the machine Rahm Emanuel took over, right?
The daily machine.
Yeah, the daily machine. Well, they put Obama in the White House, and this could simply be Obama covering his flank as the big man,
Very
saying,
possible.
"You're gonna go take that seat, watch my six."
Very
I
possible.
also think there's a huge chunk of it that says now you're set up to run for a much larger office
Yep.
again, as he was before.
Yes.
And I think he's done as far as about as you can get to do in Chicago, given the nature of Chicago.
Yeah.
You know, he was put in a tough spot a couple of times. I thought he actually went against his constituency a couple of times.
Yeah.
For example, the teachers' union strike that they were just about to have, and he got that solved pretty damn fast.
Yeah, which is funny because growing up, the teachers' union strike would strike every other year that I could, and it would delay the start of school often.
God bless them.
but
We've had an office there for 6 years, and they've struck 3 times.
yeah.
And shut down the schools where your kids can
Oh,
go
yeah.
to school.
Absolutely.
Well, how did you,
This is
just
a-
real quick, just a quick reference, how did you feel about what you got for an education from those teachers?
My mom, in her infinite wisdom, in grammar school, she made sure that I was in private school the entire time. So I didn't get into Chicago public school system until high school. So I went to Limblom Tech College Prep for freshman year and about half of sophomore year, and it was fine, but my mom saw a couple of things in me that were bubbling up that she didn't like, and she moved physically out of the city into the suburbs, and I wound up going to school in the south suburbs of the city. So I didn't spend as much time in the Chicago public school system as a lot of my friends did. But I personally never had any real issues. But like I say, for all disclosure, I was only in the public school system for about 2 years, honestly, because I was in private school most of the time. Because the public school system always struck.
No different than Kansas City.
Yeah, it was like the public school system always struck. It was, and I was always amazed that they would allow it to get to that point every year.
Yeah.
That they hadn't settled contracts with teachers, but as Chris knows, Chicago is definitely a handshake with one hand, hand me the envelope with the other hand city, and that's just kind of what it is. And I have said on this program several times, I have fundamental issues with both candidates for different reasons, but I can only, out of the 2 candidates that are actually viable for the office, there's only one of them I can vote for, and the simple reason is I understand her politics.
Because they are the machine.
I understand the
Clintons are
machine. Like, I fully respect the machine. I grew up in the machine. I know how the machine works.
They are the machine.
So the machine doesn't scare me.
I'm gonna dovetail off that and flip this on its head. I think with the demise of Donald Trump, we're going to see the Republican Party revisit the whole concept of a machine.
Yeah.
And this is teaching them a lesson that you can't run a machine based on ideology, right? It's run based on money.
Yeah.
Right.
Money greases the wheels.
Right. So just watch this vitriolic us versus them debate is going to morph from abortion and women's rights to just a discussion of money, which is politics as usual for the United States pre Ronald Reagan.
That's a joke.
Yeah, that's legit.
Good observation.
So, does anybody else remember any other, in particular, cities?
Kansas City.
that had-
We're sitting in his
Yeah,
room.
which is the reason why I said cities in particular.
Well, I can give you a unique example because I've done work in the inner city here in Kansas City. All right, and we are unique in this city because we have one area.
Yeah.
And we really truly have one area. And there's a boundary, and everybody knows in this town what the boundary is.
Yeah.
And every time that we've done business down there, I got the hand here and the hand here. Every single time.
Oh, yeah.
They're all on the take.
Yeah.
And, the Tracy Avenue, I work for Citizens Housing Information Council. There's a fellow named Mr. Brim down there that the first time I did a house down there off of Benton, I noticed that first thing I noticed, our materials coming out of Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make sense. That's a handout.
Yeah, absolutely.
They got the kickback going on. And on all this thing, Mr. Brim showed up in a brand new Suburban, then he showed up in a Vet, same color scheme.
Yeah.
He's in and out of the houses, he got all his ladies going on down there.
Yeah.
And he had a superintendent that was really trying to do right, but he just knew what was going on. You just knew what was going on. And I've seen this time and time again where I've gotten to the point where I don't really want to do a lot of work in that area because we have problems. I had some friends that own a restaurant down at 18th and Vine who unfortunately were busted for selling cocaine out of it. But they have railed against down there, and the problem with 18th and Vine in particular is that most of the business owners down there state we have to have multicultural investment down there. We need to have multicultural investment because right now it's just the African American community wants to totally own it, but they need injection of other money and other ideas because we all know anybody that lives in Kansas City and spend any time at 18th and Vine understands that place could be special.
Yeah.
We could have the bars and the music and the restaurants and everything else. We already have the Blue Room and Danny's and then the different places in the gym and the Jazz Museum and the African and Negro Museum and all this stuff, the Negro Baseball Players Museum. That place could be phenomenal. And we've always seen, my wife and I have always seen that potential, and it frustrates us greatly that they can't seem to get the next step up.
Right.
But it's going to take outside investment to get it done, and they don't want that outside investment.
So we have
And they have a
Chicago
barbecue
machine
machine.
and Kansas City
And
had
yeah.
a machine and
Yeah.
And it's still here. The machine is still
It's,
here.
yeah, it's just, I don't.
Not like Chicago, but it's
It's
still.
not, yeah, not everybody's buying into the machine.
Well, the American Royal moving out the Wyandotte. There's a perfect example of the machine failed. They.
No, it just moved to Wyandotte County.
That's what I'm noticing. Like, there is a.
But there's a certain amount of
This is
wealth in
true.
this town, and that wealth, you cannot fight it. If you're government, you're not gonna fight that wealth. I'm a fortunate recipient of a lot of these people because I build their houses. But you cannot fight that, and the city thought that they could fight these guys.
Yeah.
Big mistake,
Once again,
big mistake.
respect the machine.
Right.
It's a different type of machine.
Yeah.
You know where you're getting paid.
So before we go into closing, historically, any machines you guys want to mention that were just wildly influential, in particularly on American culture?
Well, clearly Tammany Hall would be the first one you would think
That's the
of.
first true
And
machine.
that's the most famous one of
So
all.
which one?
Tammany Hall in New York. We
Yeah.
clearly got Dealers in
They
Chicago.
were literally.
I think the
the,
one.
Fitzgerald's in Boston.
Atlantic City,
and New York and.
the Atlantic City,
With Nucky.
Yes.
Time.
I can't think of his,
Busing.
What about the
Nucky,
Roosevelts?
actually, Nucky Johnson in real life.
In real life it was, yeah.
Yeah.
The Roosevelts were a machine too.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Well,
To a large
you
degree.
go back, the Rockefellers, the
Yeah.
Roosevelt, I mean,
Rockefeller just uses money to buy influence. He was never a machine, I wouldn't say. Neither was Carnegie, neither was JP Morgan. They just they were so rich.
So
They
rich,
just said,
yeah.
"You gotta do
Is
it."
that kind of like the local Koch brothers?
Well, at the time,
I
they
grew up
were.
across the street from the Koch brothers, so I know a lot about them. So I would definitely tell you that yes, of course they throw their money around, but it's for the same reason. It's not necessarily to be a political machine. It's to go, hey, help me steal the rights to the Indians' oil in Oklahoma because they got it and I really want it. That's how they made most of their money.
Yeah.
So,
And who is this?
The Koch brothers.
Yeah,
out
yeah.
of Wichita. I literally grew up across the street from them, and that's all they ever did. I mean, that's just business to those guys. That's not politics. And I think politics has a weirder element of power to it than necessarily just trying to be richer for yourself. And that's why I would think a Pendergast kind of a machine is different than a Koch brothers, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Because Pendergast willpower like nobody's business. I mean, it was ridiculous. There were lines around the block of people waiting for jobs, and he would have a red or a blue pen, and he would mark yes or no, and the colors represented, he would hand it to a guy, and you got walked out, or you got a federal job. That was it. So, I mean, it was a pretty clear-cut
machine, right?
and in that, if you look at the history of the machine, it took a long time to grow. It was a super fascinating topic, probably for another day, because we always meet in the Pendergast room. But it was a very well-oiled, very well-run machine all the way up until, and what was unique about it was he was a political boss, and no, actually it was that he made a deal with the Italian mafia that Johnny Lazzi would be the police portion of this, and he would provide protection for the Italian mob all the way up until Union Station. And Union Station changed everything because if you go back into the history of the FBI, before that you were buying your own guns, buying your own car, they couldn't do crap. All of a sudden, Union Station massacre happens, and there's this huge public outcry, and now all of a sudden you see Herbert, what was his face, J. Edgar Hoover, all of a sudden consolidate all of his power, and you have a modern FBI based on Union Station massacre, and it changed all the rules. And then the other one who did was Rudy Giuliani in New York, who started enforcing these RICO statutes, which were ridiculous. Prior to the RICO statutes in the early 70s, you had to have committed the crime. It wasn't just that you acknowledge and organize the crime, but you had to have done the crime. All of a sudden, they started using the RICO statutes to
That's
bust
where everybody,
all
right?
the
Social
gangs.
associates.
And they said, well, you're the one organizing Reno, you're the head of the Gambino family, so you're going to jail too. And the RICO statutes held, and that's how Giuliani became famous. So, it's kind of an interesting notion.
Alright.
It's very hard to be a run mob these days.
Yeah, respect the machine.
Most of the mob's gone legal.
Alright, so, that's definitely.
That's the biggest, most dangerous machine in the
That's
country.
right.
Old white money.
No doubt about it.
I work for one of them.
Alright, so, last but not least, we've touched on so many things around the election. Any closing arguments for people out there in podcast land who may be wondering, who in the fuck should I still vote for?
I would beg you to not vote.
Okay. Dave?
Well, Dave is running.
No, well, because I want you to vote for me.
Vote for
but
Big
that's,
Dave.
You know
that's
what?
another
And that's enough.
That's enough.
Like,
I don't know,
Dave wants you to vote for Dave.
This is a very, very, very difficult election, a very difficult thing to decide. I think with all the things we got on the state level in Missouri in particular, and with the presidential election, I think if you get out of the voting booth in 20 minutes, you've done well. We got a lot of
I
things.
think you could if you've actually read up and researched everything that's on the ballot.
Which we do.
We may,
But most people don't. A lot of people aren't even going to mark something because they don't know it, or they're going to mark something just because bada bing or bada bing. And it's just, I don't know. I am still at this moment. Can I vote for either candidate? Until tomorrow, I don't know that I got a decision on that.
And this is really my point. I feel like if right now it's undecided, because I'm with you, I am very undecided. You're electing a criminal or an idiot. I can't support either one of them, so I just, for the very first time in my life, I'm not going to vote for President of the United States. I'll vote for the local offices and all those other things, but I can't vote for either one of those dipshits.
So you can't vote for an independent or, like, I mean, there's 2 other people on the ballot.
Not throwing away my ballot.
He's gonna vote for Big Dave. That's who he's gonna write in. He's gonna write in Big Dave, why don't you? Come on.
Yeah, I might.
All right.
You know, I'm not even registered to vote because I still hold a commission in the United States Army, and
Yeah, you can't
Well,
vote.
it's
well, no, you can. It's just it's a very well established tradition among officers that we don't, because as an officer you execute policy, and if you vote, you're exercising influence over the creation of policy, and if you're executing policy, you have influence over the creation thereof. That is the definition of an autocracy, and that is against every principle of our founding. So I don't vote.
Okay. Brain mass.
I don't know.
Ride with me. You don't
So
vote?
Chris is encouraging you
No,
not
I-
to vote.
You don't know or you don't vote?
Yeah.
I vote. I'll go vote. I don't know that I'll vote.
You
for
don't know if
president
you
this
don't
time,
know if you're
but-
sure about either
But
candidate
it's
for president.
it's just it's hard to it's hard to support the whole thing when it's kind of falling apart.
You know,
You feel a little dirty either way.
Yeah, you do.
You know,
well,
I
and
think
you
that's
feel bad, and you
that's
feel bad for not voting.
You feel bad for not voting, but at the same time, if I do vote, I feel a little dirty. I feel a little slimy.
I feel like I've been more so just sitting back and just watching this. It's like a movie that is finally going to be over tomorrow.
Oh, it's just starting tomorrow.
Well, the problem,
We're gonna be in,
We've been
chapter
watch-
2
We've been
tomorrow.
watching the
I haven't even been able to
trailers.
watch the local news because of the political commercials that are associated.
They drive me.
You just can't
It's-
even watch
This
it.
has been and I know you're gonna disagree, but in my memory, this has been the most negative campaign season, all the way from the president, all the way down to the local level. Just negative, negative, negative. You don't hear anything positive in any campaign ad anywhere.
And it's hard for me because I'm a positive personality.
I am
And I know
too,
you
and
are too,
I
and
don't
it's-
like watching the news and
it's-
getting mad.
It's
What
hard
are
for
you shaking
me,
your head
it's
for?
hard for me
Oh, I'm
to
just-
maintain that.
This
Yeah, I
is-
agree with you.
it's a false choice
What is a false choice?
between both these morons.
And you know, not voting feels bad too. I mean,
Yeah.
just even.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
I
amazing.
honestly, you really have to vote your conscience, what you can live with. I've said that before. You know, no matter if you do or you don't, it's what feels right to you.
You mean
And
like if it was suddenly exposed who voted for who, you'd feel okay about what
Nick
you voted
Saban for president.
I've talked to,
Nick
I
Saban.
actually have talked to, there are, I would be okay with it. I may not like it, but it's your choice and you have we have the right to vote for who we wanna vote for. Now, I can tell you that there are people that wouldn't like my choice and that would be very vocal about it in a not very nice way. So, it just, that's what I mean about it's very frustrating and upsetting when you can't have a real conversation with people. Everything has to be hidden because you don't wanna know what, somebody else is saying.
I do have to give a shout out to my 86-year-old mother-in-law, Carmen Chaparian, who says she's gonna vote for the Pope.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay. That's legit.
Very good.
You know
That
what?
is legit.
You know what? On that note, I'm going to say everybody else around the table gave their final arguments, and I will give mine. This is probably the first year that I'm going to say this and mean it. Because normally what I would say is, it doesn't matter who you vote for, you need to get out and exercise your constitutional right to vote, because many people fought and died for us to have said rights. What I'm going to amend that to this year is really the same thing that we've kind of heard around the table, and that is please vote your conscience. And if and I will say, if your conscience will not allow you to vote for either candidate for president.
Vote for Big Dave.
You know, vote for Big Dave.
Thank you,
Hey,
thank you very
look,
much.
You can write in the Loft Party podcast.
I'm not a crook.
I will be happy to cyber serve as as president over from this distance. But vote your conscience, because at the end of the day, you know, when you leave that booth, you've made a choice, and that choice legitimately this time could be, I don't want to make a choice. And on that note, I want to end this with the toast that I started this all with, and that is to good times and good people.
Hey.